Daily Show. Tuesday. I didn't come into work yesterday because I was in Nashville doing the adoption, and so it just feels like I have missed a whole entire week now. I just don't know what to do with my job anymore. It's like, how do I do this show?
Sure. Imagine being gone for a week. What would you do with yourself?
I don't know. Holly, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. CJ, how are you?
Oh, good. And the last time we talked a lot about a lot. I feel like we did a comprehensive overview, a little bit of your services at Keith Short and Associates, in which you're a partner at. And today we're talking workers' comp.
Yeah, we are. So we'll just jump in by saying Keith was supposed to be here this morning. He had a family situation come up, so I'm jumping in. So if I'm not completely prepared, everybody has to forgive me. But no, I do want to talk to you a little bit about workers' compensation. It's kind of a very nuanced area of law. Mm-hmm. It's anybody who's been hurt while in the course and scope of their employment. That's the legal term. So it can be a variety of things. I've actually had a principal who was roller skating with her students, fell, broke her wrist.
And on a field trip?
Like in the gym.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And so the question was, as the principal, should she have been doing that?
Makes sense.
So the employer is saying, that's not, you're the principal. That's not really within your job description. Don't, it's not a compensable claim. We, of course, argued that.
Why is it not?
Right. And she's engaging with the children. And so we had testimony actually from members of the school board that came in at trial and testified that, we've told her the importance of engaging with the students in this particular role. We made that a priority of her job. So we kind of asked her to do this, and we ended up winning that trial.
Makes sense.
But it's one of those things where, you don't know if something's in the course and scope until you get into the trial. And the really interesting thing about workers' compensation, which is different than what Keith talks to you about a lot, in the med mal sense and the jury trial sense, is we don't have discovery like you have in a normal trial. So in a medical malpractice case, you've done the depositions of the plaintiff, of the doctor, of all the experts. You pretty much know what everybody's going to say when you walk into trial. The kind of wild card is the jury. In workers' compensation, we don't have that. We don't have that discovery element. So you show up for trial, and it really is like you see in the TV shows where the question is asked and all of a sudden the answer is revealed, and it's a surprise at the trial. That actually happens in comp.
Really?
Yeah.
So does it happen a lot with, the clients you represent, or is it on the other side? Because we've talked before when you're on about how important transparency is, and saying we've got to be honest about the process and what we did and everything
I'm going to be very upset if it happens on my side.
So it's going to be a long conversation after the court session.
Absolutely. But we don't have a chance to talk to that employer's representative that comes to trial until we start asking questions.
Do you ever, so how do you piece that together just in case, do you always go in planning on, let's say they do answer the way you don't want them to answer?
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Yeah. And then you're prepared to cross-examine them. But it's very much on the fly. It's very much shooting from the hip, which kind of makes it exciting.
Well, have you ever had a moment where you were just completely wrong about what they were going to say on trial, where they just completely bold-faced were honest about it and said, actually, we were completely at fault here?
This one was kind of interesting because that was a school board member, but I have another one that's actually coming up where a guy got hurt at work and the supervisor is saying it didn't happen at work.
Oh.
And a coworker saying, oh, yes, it did. I watched it happen. So we have this battle of testimony that's going to take place.
And now, does this get decided by a jury or a judge?
It gets decided with workers' compensation. It's an arbitrator.
Okay.
So it's an arbitrator that's appointed by the state. There's 3 of them in each zone. So the zone that we're in most of the time is Collinsville, Mount Vernon, and Heron. So we kind of go into that southern Illinois zone. And the arbitrators actually rotate between those. So your case is assigned to an arbitrator originally as soon as it's filed. But then you may see that arbitrator in Collinsville or Mount Vernon or Heron. If you have an emergency hearing, kind of follow the arbitrator where they go. Yeah.
Well, and I guess my first question before I lead into the second one is it harder for a workers' comp because of the size of a company? Like if someone gets hurt because they work for a mom and pop, type of business, maybe it's a construction or a general contractor that's local and just not a conglomerate. do you see a lot of those going to trial, or is it because, they just don't feel comfortable doing that, compared to maybe if they were working for a major corporation?
It kind of depends, because keep in mind, you're dealing with the insurance company,
Right.
not the employer directly. So it really depends on the insurance company. I mean, the employers do have some say. Some of them really like to take a hard position, and some of them leave it to their insurance company and don't want to don't want to deal with the day-to-day of the lawsuits. So it really depends. Sometimes the mom and pop ones are actually harder because they may not have insurance.
Oh,
so then you're dealing with an uninsured situation. So those are always
Does that become
hardest.
a nightmare?
Oh, absolutely. Absolute nightmare. Because generally then they don't have counsel to represent them. It's us trying to deal with the owner of a company who just wants to do their job. They don't want to deal with this injury. So sometimes the larger companies are actually easier to deal with. I could see that. Because they have a system in place to process it. So it really just depends. And it depends on the specifics of the case too.
What about, this is a weird one. I know you get this, I'm sure, a lot, is maybe someone was an athlete in college and they've already had kind of an irritating back issue.
Sure.
But they go into a field that it might not even be lifting or anything. Maybe it's just sitting in an office desk chair for 8 hours a day, and it leads to maybe their back becoming worse over time, whatever it is. Do the factors that lead up to the injury or that lead up to why there's a workers' comp claim really go in there, and how far back do they go? Because to me, if you're an athlete, that's pretty important for the judge to know that, I did break this shoulder in college, and I've already had issues with it.
Sure, and it absolutely plays in, but it plays in this way. The employer takes their employee how they find them.
Got you.
So my leg's been broken twice. It's a disaster. But if I slip and fall, let's say somebody spills water in the kitchen at my office and I slip and fall and re-break the leg. Is my leg more likely to break again with a very minor injury? Yes. Is the employer or the insurance company still buying that injury?
That
Yes.
makes sense.
Yeah, because it's you take the employee how you find them. Now, that being said, they're going to look at the records, right? They're going to look and see, they'll usually go back 5 years when ordering medical records. The insurance company will, to see if there's any pre-existing injuries. And then the question becomes, what were they and where were you at? So, if I haven't treated for this leg in the last several years and it was stable and now it's not stable, it's a new injury. That's kind of what you look at. So you look at how long it's been since you've received treatment, what your complaints were before the accident versus after the accident. So you may have had complaints, but it may have been completely different than what your complaints of that body part are after the accident. So you really have to dive into the medical records and sometimes take the doctor's deposition and find out if the doctor's saying, well, I saw this before, but now I see this and this is new. So you get into really deep into the weeds of the medical sometimes.
Now, does the pain scale ever factor in, where someone says I'm experiencing a 5 out of 10 and then all of a sudden, now I'm at an 8 or 9 out of 10?
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely. That goes into it. Yeah, and you're looking for consistency in the medical records.
That makes sense.
We were always at a 2 before this, even though we were treating. After this intervening accident, now we're at a 7 consistently. So there is something that happened there, and now you're responsible as the insurance company. And that kind of leads me into, what are you entitled to in work comp? So, somebody's been hurt at work. Obviously, they didn't plan on it. Usually they're just going about their day. Something happens. It can be a car accident while driving in the course and scope of your employment, something falling on you that, you had nothing to do with. You're lifting something and you feel a pop in your shoulder, neck, back. We get that a lot. Little things like that. There's also the repetitive nature of it. So you do a lot of typing, you develop carpal tunnel syndrome. So there's different kinds of accident, whether it's a acute, instant, injured yourself, or something repetitive over time.
Wow.
So somebody, realizes, okay, I've been hurt at work. Now what? So the question is, what are they entitled to under the Workers' Compensation Act? And we look at 3 really specific factors. 1, medical treatment.
Okay.
So you're entitled to medical treatment to alleviate or at least minimize the injury, and the insurance company should be paying for that medical treatment. You're also entitled to what's called temporary total disability benefits. We call it TTD for short.
Okay.
And that is to make up for any lost wages. So if you are being kept off work by a doctor for this particular injury, or you're put on restrictions by the doctor that the employer says, hey, we can't accommodate that. You know, this is a heavy lifting job, and they put you on a sedentary where you have to sit and do your job kind of job restriction. We don't have anything that fits that. So in the event that they can't accommodate or your doctor keeps you off work, you're entitled to that temporary total disability benefit. And that's calculated at 2/3 of your average weekly wage. Wow. So we tell a client that, and their immediate reaction is, well, I can't live on 2/3 of my salary. That doesn't work for me, but it's not taxed. So you don't have all the withholding that you would have on a typical paycheck. So typically it comes out close or close-ish. So that's a benefit that's really important to get them. And then finally, at the end of the case, when you're at what we call maximum medical improvement, that means you are medically as good as you're going to get. Maybe not 100%, because sometimes, unfortunately, you don't get back to 100%, but as good as you're going to get, treatment's kind of stalled out. Then you're entitled to what's called a permanent partial disability settlement. Okay. And that's kind of the lump sum at the end of the case for the resulting disability that you have based on having been injured at work.
Okay. Now, a couple of questions on that. Does that mean we file for disability after that and we don't go back to work?
No.
Okay, so, that's just why I asked.
So yeah, and it's really confusing, right? Because disability, people understand disability as being Social Security disability. Right. Sometimes both of those things come into play. If it's a severe injury, sometimes they've also applied for Social Security disability, and that's a whole nother set of things that we have to kind of deal with to make sure that we maximize the value of our case without diminishing their Social Security disability benefits. But this is simply, let's say I broke my pinky finger. Okay. A pinky finger is worth X number of weeks. So if I broke it and now it's crooked or doesn't bend, you know, let's say I have a 50% loss of use of that finger. Then you take 50% of the number of the weeks of the finger and you calculate it based on your wage. And that's how you kind of come up with those numbers. So somebody might say, well, if it's all a math problem, why do I need you? That's a really good question. And it's a smart question to ask if you've gone in to see an attorney. And sometimes we'll tell people, you know, maybe you don't. If they've accepted your case, if they're paying all the benefits, maybe you don't. But most likely you do. And there's several reasons. Because of those three things that we can get during work comp. If they're denying medical treatment, you need us. If they are paying you TTD, but maybe paying you at an incorrect rate, you know, they're not factoring in mandatory overtime and they should be, then you need us. And even if they offer you some lump sum settlement at the end, that doesn't mean that what they're offering you is the maximum value you could get for that case. And 99.9% of the time, if you hire an attorney, we're going to get that number up higher because they know we will try the case and we're going to get more money if we take it to trial.
Well, to me, it's just a comfort thing. You know, why would you go through this? So it's already something terrible.
Sure.
And, you know, I get a lot of times maybe it's because the money factor is into it and you go, man, how much is going to go out to my attorney by the end of this? How does the payout break down? And we can talk about that too, or not really numbers, but just how that works at the end of the case and what those disbursements look like. But, you know, maybe it's just that. And we get nervous and go, oh, we'll just do this on our own. But to me, that's a lot of sleepless nights when you can just call somebody that knows what they're doing and walk you through it.
Absolutely. And the sooner we're called, the better.
Yeah.
Because we can get the treatment faster because we can threaten emergency hearings if we need to.
Makes sense.
Can get the TTD faster because of that same reason. And go ahead.
No, well, and too, you know, it also seems like a company would be more apt to go, okay, well, we're going to give you this for your injury to CJ Nacello than they would going with Holly calling them going, okay, yeah, what are you doing here? Because this is, you aren't even paying for half of this. You're just making them feel better about, you know, falling and almost hurting, you know, ending something.
Oh,
here.
Absolutely. We've had people come to us and say, well, the insurance company paid for all my medical treatment. They paid me TTD, but they said because I was feeling pretty good, I'm not entitled to any money at the end.
Oh.
No, not true.
Can you still go back after that, though, if they've already gone through that process?
So that's why, luckily, this person came to us before they signed the settlement contract.
So if you sign it, you're pretty much, it's over. Yeah,
but they came to us before they signed the settlement contract. We were able to enter in the case, get some value for them for the case. But, you know, don't believe what the insurance company tells you, right?
Yeah.
So we deal with those kind of things constantly. And to your question about how much is the attorney going to get, that's mandated by state.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. We get 20% of that final lump sum settlement. It's a contract that's drafted by the state, by the Illinois Workers' Compensation Commission. I couldn't take more money if I wanted to. So
that makes sense.
It's, it's really quite easy to calculate.
Yeah. Well, so just so I can understand, because we're going to have to take a break here soon and come back and talk more. Whenever you're going through workers' comp, the insurance is paying for the medical attention, correct?
That's correct.
And then there's that temporary disability.
Yep.
And then you have the final permanent disability sum, and we can go over the correct terms again. But so at the end, does the individual who maybe wins that workers' comp case, is there any more bills left to pay?
There shouldn't be.
Okay, that's what I was curious about.
Yeah, all the medical bills should be paid as part of the trial or settlement. Obviously, there's always caveats, right? Sometimes a case is kind of questionable, so you settle it on a disputed basis, and maybe they deny liability for some of the bills, and you kind of work out something on a disputed settlement. But assuming there's no issues with the case that give rise to maybe some defenses where you have to settle it on a disputed basis, then yes, there should be no medical bills left. Those should all be taken care of.
And now, before we do take a quick break, just a weird one for you. Can a sole proprietorship or like a small business owner, maybe they have 1 or 2 employees and they do have insurance, let's say they're on a ladder and fall off and they hurt themselves, can they tap into their workers' comp insurance policy through that, or does that get convoluted?
Well, it depends. Okay. So it depends on how they are categorized within their insurance policy.
Wow, okay.
If they, and that's if you are a small business owner, have that conversation with your insurance company. Am I a covered employee or am I not? Because that makes a difference.
I'm not getting on the ladder if I ain't.
Exactly. Yeah. It's important to make sure that you also have those benefits, because obviously your paycheck's going to be impacted if you've fallen off a ladder.
Wow. That's interesting. We'll take a quick break. 9:33. We'll come back with Holly and talk more about workers' comp. And I'm just learning a lot today. This is cool. We'll come back with more after this.
With over 20 years of experience, Wilson's Tree Service has the expertise to handle all of your tree care needs. Licensed and fully insured, their team of experts are dedicated to providing reliable service. Plus, with a 24-hour emergency service line, Wilson's will always be there for you. Don't risk tackling that timber by yourself. Trust the local professionals at Wilson's Tree Service. Visit treeservicealtonil.org to get started today.
Discover Del Mar Public House, located in Godfrey's historic Clifton Schoolhouse. Enjoy bold flavors like homemade falafel, fish and chips, and rotating pasta favorites. Relax with local beers, half-price wine bottles, and summer poutine nights. The only thing missing is you. Open Wednesday through Sunday. Del Mar Public House, where great food, drinks, and friends come together. DelMarPublicHouse.com.
Do you need to declutter your space? Time to call me, the Queen of Junk. Since 1993, we have grown to be the leader in residential, commercial, and property management junk removal. At Sparks Junk Removal, we are eco-friendly. We recycle, donate, or repurpose items back into our community. Trash is our last resort to the landfill. Plus, with our all-inclusive service, our crews handle everything from labor to lifting and landfill fees. Give us a call or visit our website, sparksjunkremoval.net, to reclaim your space today.
When I got in the car accident at the ER, they gave me a prescription of hydrocodone. And over time, it took more medication to mask the pain. I moved over to drug seeking and found heroin and fentanyl. I went to the Centerstone rehab facility, and it was the best decision I ever made in my life. I have my own car, I have a job. There's nothing holding me back anymore.
When you need a project done right, on budget and on time, trust Gillahan Concrete. Gillahan handles every kind of project, big and small. Commercial, industrial, residential, from room additions and garages to patios, driveways, and more. Gillahan brings quality and experience to every job. Family owned with over 30 years of service to our community. Call today at 618-781-3914 or visit GillahanConcrete.com.
Accidents happen in a heartbeat, but lives change forever. Whether it's a car crash, workplace injury, medical malpractice, or wrongful death, you don't have to face the consequences alone. Keith Short and Associates brings over 33 years of experience and a reputation for fighting fiercely for your rights. For relentless representation that you can trust, call Keith Short and Associates at 618-254-0055 today for a free consultation.
You're listening to Our Daily Show with CJ Nasello on RiverBender.com.
Hey, me, what you wanna do? I think I could stay with you for a while, maybe longer if I do.
Welcome back. Daily Show. On a Tuesday. It just still does not feel like Tuesday to me, but that's okay. We're getting there. We're getting there and waking up. You know, what's the biggest myth, Holly, you hear about workers' comp?
You know, you hear a lot of people talk about, especially from the employer's perspective, that it's a lot of people faking their injuries. There's a lot of subjective evidence that proves otherwise. You know, so sometimes we have to involve the doctors in that. But for the most part, people aren't going to fake that they got hurt at work. Work comp is not one of those types of areas of law where anybody gets rich.
That makes sense.
You know, so why would you fake an injury, go through all the treatment, the headache, and all of this when, you know, sometimes our clients come out just okay after it. It's one of those systems that was designed to balance the interests of the employer and the employee. So the employee doesn't get rich off of it. The employer doesn't go broke off of it. It's meant to meet somewhere in the middle. Sometimes it does feel like it meets in the middle. Sometimes it feels like the employee really gets the short end of the stick. And we kind of talked about this during the break, but you know, everything is based on your average weekly wage when it comes to workers' compensation. So they take the average of the 52 weeks prior to the date of accident and then calculate your average weekly wage over that time period. So that TTD, that temporary total disability benefit that we talked about, is 2/3 of that average weekly wage. So if you're a higher end earner, you get more.
Right.
If you're a lower end earner, you get less. What happens if you work in an industry where there's a lot of cash tips? Are you claiming those on your taxes? Are you claiming those on your paycheck? If you're not, on paper, your average weekly wage is going to be much lower than maybe what you were actually living off of. And you end up in a very difficult situation in those cases. So, you know, that average weekly wage plays in a factor, but there's also maximum and minimum rates. So
gotcha.
Let's say you are a electrician and have been an electrician for 30 years with the union. You make a really good rate of pay. So you may be maxed out. So then you hit a ceiling. So 2/3, you know, of your average weekly wage may not be what you get for TTD because you've hit that max limit. So it's actually kind of worse for those people because
they're getting a lot.
Right. They're getting a much smaller portion of their rate. And that comes into play then for the final PPD settlement, the permanent partial disability settlement, because that's 60% of your average weekly wage multiplied by the percentage loss of use of that body part. I never thought I would be doing this much math. I went to law school. I thought I was going to use words. We do a lot of math here.
Well, and it goes back to what you're telling people though. And I think it's important, you know, for folks that maybe have some idea that, you know, one of these types of lawsuits or these injury, you know, at work is like this huge payday, and it's a balancing system. And like you said, normally teeters back to the employer side of the equation.
Certainly can.
Yeah.
Certainly can.
Well, okay. So my question is, does workers' comp go for anything internal, like, or illness? Like, let's say someone had, you know, something rupture on, you know, the job site, and maybe it was because they were lifting something like a hernia, you know, does that go into it? Is it all, or is it only things that we can see?
No, we get hernia cases a lot.
Okay.
The weird thing about hernia cases is they're worth very little because the idea behind it is once they repair the hernia and put in mesh, that area is actually stronger and less likely to re-herniate. So the value of those cases tends to be small, but you still want the medical benefits paid. You want the time off paid. So even if that final settlement isn't substantial, you still want those other benefits taken care of for sure.
Can you get in trouble for a workers' comp claim? Like, let's say, I've returned to work after I break my pinky or I break my hand, and can you get in trouble, number one? And then the follow-up, can you file more than one workers' comp claim if you get hurt again, at the same job?
So there is a prohibition in the law about retaliation for filing a workers' compensation case. Do employers sometimes retaliate in other ways?
Yeah.
It happens. Unfortunately, it does happen. And again, if you have an attorney, they're probably less likely to do that because they don't want to have to deal with getting a nasty letter from me telling them to knock it off. But yes, if someone has exercised their rights under the Illinois Workers' Compensation Act and you retaliate against them for that, that's a violation of the law. So yeah, it's kind of one of those. What was the second part of the question?
Can you have, like, let's say,
multiple claims? Yeah,
that's interesting to me. Like, can you, let's say, you break your hand at work, and then all of a sudden you're walking in the parking lot and you slip and fall on a patch of ice.
2 separate claims.
No,
two
kidding.
dates of accident.
And so, is there anything? So the employer still at that time can't say, "Listen, you're kind of, and you're clumsy, and this is happening." So there's nothing like that they can do.
No, they may ask for. Sometimes employers will say, "I don't want to deal with this employee anymore."
That makes sense.
So they will ask for, as part of a settlement, like a release and resignation for an additional piece of compensation. So we'll settle the case for this. We'll pay you this much additional money if you'll just resign and go find work somewhere else. That happens occasionally.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and now you don't sue ever the employer directly, right?
Oh, well, I mean, you name the employer as the respondent, but if they have an insurance company, they immediately hand it over to their insurance company, and that's typically who we're dealing with.
So if they don't have insurance, we were talking about this earlier, what's the mess in the web that turns into?
It's a mess. So you try to get some kind of settlement from the employer themselves, but usually if they don't have insurance, they don't have deep pockets either to resolve the claim. Sometimes they'll try to resolve it with what they can resolve it with. There is also a fund in the state of Illinois that allows for there's excess funds that come from fees paid and things like that. So you can apply to have funds from that state fund pay some of those medical bills, but it's after the fact.
Okay, that makes sense.
So yeah, you have to go get the treatment and everything else and then apply for reimbursement.
So another thing I was wondering about too is, let's say that we had a pre-existing condition. I don't know if this ever comes up, but if it does that ever take an effect or into account of the payout? And if so, does it fall in line with you have to hire, with the equal employment opportunity thing?
It can factor in, but generally you take the employers. Let's say somebody had cancer.
Okay.
And the chemo treatment has made their bones brittle.
Yep.
So they fall and they really shattered their leg. What would normally be maybe a sprained ankle for somebody else is a shattered ankle for this person. You're paying for the shattered ankle.
No kidding. That's very interesting to me. That's what I was really curious about before, and that's why I meant internal. That makes sense. So you aren't going to obviously take a workers' comp claim from diagnosis of cancer, but if you hurt yourself, no matter what, you can still take that workers' comp claim.
Yeah, and when you talk about internal injuries, we've had sometimes a heart attack can be compensated.
Really?
Now you would think, how?
Yeah.
Right? Well, let's say somebody witnesses something very disturbing at work. Mm-hmm. So they're at work, maybe they work in an emergency room and somebody comes in with a gunshot wound. That's, something overly traumatic. We have a client who witnessed her coworker being stabbed in the workplace and had a panic attack because of that and passed out and hurt her back. That happened within her workplace. Yeah. Was it part of her job? No, but she had to be there. Mm-hmm. She witnessed this. So those, we occasionally have emotional cases.
That makes sense.
And it's not going to be, people, those are really difficult cases to deal with because it can't be just, well, I'm sad because I got hurt.
Right.
That doesn't cut it. It has to be, my life was threatened during me doing my job. And now I cannot sleep at night. I have PTSD. I have documented panic attacks. It has to be something above just, I'm sad.
Does a pre-existing mental health concern make those cases harder too? Like, let's say that we already have documented panic attacks, or we already have these situations that come up from, maybe high stress or just a lot of an overstimulating moment. Does that go into play when you talk about these?
It absolutely does. Yeah. So again, that's where you turn to the provider and say, I need you to testify, I need to take your deposition, and we need to find out if you can delineate before and after.
That makes sense.
Can you describe the change? And of course, it's really easy to see a broken bone on an x-ray.
Yeah.
It's much harder to say PTSD. There are testing, and tools, of course, that a psychiatrist or a psychologist has, but there's no blood test and you can say, yes, this is it.
Right.
There's no x-ray that shows it. So those makes cases really interesting.
What are the biggest reasons that a case or a claim gets denied?
Questions about whether the accident happened in the course and scope of employment, so nobody saw it. Questions about whether there were other things that could have factored into it. So let's use carpal tunnel for an example. There are other things that can cause carpal tunnel syndrome. There are some just pre-existing conditions that people have. If you have diabetes, you're more likely to have carpal tunnel syndrome. If you're female, if you're over a certain age, there's all these factors. If you do hobbies that are hand intensive, questions often asked with carpal tunnel, do you ride a motorcycle? Because the vibration of holding onto the handlebars can cause the same effect.
That makes sense.
So all those kind of questions you kind of have to rule out these other things. And the standard in Illinois workers' compensation is, could it have caused or aggravated? So it's a low standard, honestly, but repetitive trauma cases, always harder. My back hurts because I repeatedly lift heavy weights versus, nope, I was lifting something, I felt a pop and I was down. Yeah. So repetitive are always harder than specific acute traumas.
It's very interesting. And now, so before I let you go, if someone's nervous, let's say they're going through this now at work. Maybe they fell yesterday, maybe they fell a couple of days ago when they already went to the hospital because police go to the emergency room and document everything. Maybe they're still nervous though. What's the best first step for them? Is it just calling just to get a consultation? What's that look like for individuals?
Yeah, we always encourage them to come in and talk to us. It's never going to be a high pressure sales pitch with us.
Yeah.
We just earlier this week, or maybe it was the end of last week, told somebody, hey, go home and think about this. I don't feel like you're ready to commit to this, and we're not going to put you in that position. Go think about it. We've had people come in, fill out all the paperwork, and then we'll tell them, hey, we'll sit on the paperwork for a week. You think about it. You go home, you call us and tell us if you want us to file it. But certainly come in, ask your questions. The consultation is free. You may learn things, that you didn't know about the system. The other thing is get good treatment. Deal with doctors that actually handle and understand the process of workers' compensation. There's language that needs to be in the doctor's notes. The doctors who deal with workers' compensation understand that they need to address, whereas maybe your primary care doctor doesn't understand that they need to discuss the fact of whether they believe it happened at work or didn't happen at work. If that's not in the notes, there's no correlation. You rely heavily on the doctor to correlate the treatment to the injury. So it's really important to have a doctor that understands that. And we can certainly give clients names of people that we would recommend that they talk to for that.
Well, what's the best way to schedule a consultation? Is it just stopping into the office? Is it giving you a call?
Either way, you can go on our website. We have where you can request a consultation from the website. You don't have to, some people don't like to have to call in anymore. That's fine. You can do it that way. We get a message that comes to us and we can respond via email if they're more comfortable with that. Obviously calling the office is always an option. And we'll answer any questions you have even before if you want to ask some questions before you come in, we can certainly do that as well.
That's cool. Well, Holly, thank you so much for stopping by.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us.
It was a pleasure. 9:50 is the time. We'll link everything in a write-up on RiverBender.com, so how you can find Keith Short and Associates and learn more about all the other great services that you provide as well for the Riverbend. We'll take a quick break. More Daily Show comes back as we wrap up this 9 o'clock hour after this.